Hello, welcome to Heavy D Storytelling. How are you doing today? We have a little glitch on our side, but that hopefully isn't on your side. So today we are going to be reading the Bible with my dad here. And yes, I have 3D goggles, or 3D glasses. And my brother here is going to be doing the job today. Oh, no, he's not, I guess. But my sister is going to be doing the synopsis, and my dad is going to be reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Ciao. Everything is blue. Everything is red. Blue time first, Daddy.
Hi. Welcome to Heavy D Storytelling. Okay, I've been sufficiently 3D'd. Welcome to Heavy D Storytelling. I'm going to be reading perfect. All right, so here is taking my time a little bit because nobody's there yet. I did send a link to Rebecca. I think Mom gets a notification, doesn't she? Let's see. Here, I'll just send out that thing. Share with friends. There's sent. All right. So there we go. Hi. So we are, as the link that I sent out says, current moderation not set. Oh, that's a new one. Okay. So we are starting with Genesis 49, which we tried to do yesterday, and the boys were just not really paying attention. So we're going to start over with Genesis chapter 49. JJ, where do you think you should go? All right, good. That's a good choice. All right. So what is going on? I think I got a pop-up. I am deleting that. Okay, perfect. This is the English Standard Version of the Bible. Then Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you what shall happen to you in days to come. Assemble and listen, O sons of Jacob, listen to Israel, your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the first fruits of my strength, preeminent in dignity and preeminent in power, unstable as water, you shall not have preeminence. Because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Weapons of violence are their swords. Let my soul come not into their counsel. Oh, my glory, be not joined to their company. For in their anger they killed men, and in their willfulness they hamstrung oxen. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's son shall bow down before you. Judah is the lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down. He crouched as the lion, and as a lioness who dares rouse him. The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of the peoples. Binding his foal to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine, he has washed his garments in wine, and his vesture in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Zebulun shall dwell at the shore of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall be at Sidon. Issachar is a strong donkey, crouching between the sheepfolds. He saw that a resting place was good, and that the land was pleasant. So he bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant at forced labor. Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent in the way, a viper by the path, that bites the horse's heels so that his rider falls backward. Oh, I wait for your salvation, O Lord. Raiders shall raid Gad, but he shall raid at their heels. Asher's food shall be rich, and he shall yield royal delicacies. Naphtali is a doe let loose that bears beautiful fawns. Joseph is a fruitful bough, a fruitful bough by a spring. His branches run over the wall. The archers bitterly attacked him, shot at him, and harassed him severely. Yet his bow remained unmoved. His arms were made agile by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. By the God of your father, who will help you? By the Almighty, who will bless you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that crouches beneath, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of your father are mighty beyond the blessings of my parents, up to the bounties of the everlasting hills. May they be on the head of Joseph, and on the brow of him who was set apart from his brothers. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf, in the morning devouring the prey, and at evening dividing the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. This is what their father said to them as he blessed them, blessing each with the blessing suitable to him. Then he commanded them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field at Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is in it were bought from the Hittites. When Jacob finished commanding his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. That is the end of Genesis chapter 49 and chapter 50. We'll go ahead and read, and we will start a new book of the Bible starting on the next live stream. This is Genesis 50, the English Standard Version. Then Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. 40 days were required for it, for that is how many are required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him 70 days. And when the days of weeping for him were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the ears of Pharaoh, saying, My father made me swear, saying, I am about to die in my tomb that I hewed out for myself in the land of Canaan, there shall you bury me. Now therefore let me please go up and bury my father, then I will return. And Pharaoh answered, Go up and bury your father as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father. With him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his household, and all the elders of the land of Egypt, as well as all the household of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's household. Only their children, their flocks, and their herds were left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen. It was a very great company. When they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, they lamented there with a very great and grievous lamentation, and he made a mourning for his father 7 days. When the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning on the threshing floor of Atad, they said, This is a grievous mourning by the Egyptians. Therefore the place was named Abel Mizraim. It is beyond the Jordan. Thus his sons did for him as he had commanded them. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, which Abram bought with the field from Ephron the Hittite to possess as a burying place. After he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt with his brother and all who had gone up with him to bury his father. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "It may be that Joseph will hate us and pay us back for all the evil that we did to him." So they sent a message to Joseph saying, "Your father gave us this command before he died. Say to Joseph, please forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin, because they did evil to you. And now please forgive the transgression of the servants of the Father, of the God of your father." Joseph wept when they spoke to him. His brothers also came and fell down before him and said, "Behold, we are your servants." But Joseph said to them, "Do not fear, for am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. So do not fear, I will provide for you and your little ones." Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. So Joseph remained in Egypt, he and his father's house. Joseph lived 110 years, and Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. The children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were counted as Joseph's own. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob." Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, "God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here." So Joseph died, being 110 years old. They embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. That is the end of the book of Genesis. I know it's one of my favorites. So I see one person on. Hi, Rebecca. Nice to see you. And I don't know when you came on, but thank you so much for being there. It says 9 minutes ago, so maybe it's been a while. Okay, so at this time, we are going to do, are we doing the joke of the day?
No.
No joke of the day, so it is time for the synopsis. Here comes Kimberly.
Slime.
So what happened in the last chapter was they had been stuck in a bunch of ice, so they used boiling water to get out of it, and then what happened was they went over to the Atlantic, right? Wasn't it?
Yeah, they went up the Atlantic.
And they
saw a lot of really cool fish.
Yeah. And didn't they get close to some like land or something? And I think that was about it, right?
They were basically following the coast of South America.
Yeah, most of the chapter was explaining how they got out of the ice and everything.
Yeah, well, that was the first chapter. The second chapter was going up the coast of South America. And that's pretty much it. Okay, yes, that's nice. All right, so all right. Hi, Rebecca. It's good to see you tonight. Chapter 18 is called The Pulps. Are we ready? JJ, tell me if you're ready. That means laying down. Daniel, are you ready? Kimmy, are you ready? Okay. For several days, the Nautilus kept off from the American coast. Evidently, it did not wish to risk the tides of the Gulf of Mexico or of the Sea of Antilles. April 16th, we sighted Martinique and Guadeloupe from a distance of about 30 miles. I saw their tall peaks for an instant. The Canadian, who counted on carrying out his projects in the Gulf, by either landing or hailing one of the numerous boats that coast from one island to another, was quite disheartened. Flight would have been quite practicable if Ned Land had been able to take possession of the boat without the captain's knowledge, but in the open sea it could not be thought of. The Canadian consul and I had a long conversation on this subject. For 6 months we had been prisoners on board the Nautilus. We had traveled 17,000 leagues, and as Ned Land said, there was no reason why it should come to an end. We could hope nothing from the captain of the Nautilus, but only from ourselves. Besides, for some time past, he had become graver, more retired, less sociable. He seemed to shun me. I met him rarely. Formerly, he was pleased to explain the submarine marvels to me. Now he left me to my studies and came no more to the salon. What change had come over him? For what cause? For my part, I did not wish to bury with me my curious and novel studies. I had now the power to write the true book of the sea, and this book, sooner or later, I wished to see daylight. The land nearest us was the archipelago of the Bahamas. There rose high submarine cliffs covered with large weeds. It was about 11 o'clock when Ned Land drew my attention to the formidable pricking, like a sting of an ant, which was produced by means of large seaweeds. Well, I said, these are proper caverns for pulps, and I should not be astonished to see some of these monsters. What? Said Consul. Cuttlefish? Real cuttlefish? Of the cephalopod class? No, I said. Pulps of huge dimensions. I will never believe that such animals exist, said Ned. Well, said Consul, with the most serious air in the world, I remember perfectly to have seen a large vessel drawn under the waves by an octopus's arm. You saw that? Said the Canadian. Yes, Ned. With your own eyes? With my own eyes. Where, pray, might that be? At St. Malo, answered Consul. In the port, said Ned ironically. No, in church, replied Consul. In a church? Cried the Canadian. Yes, friend Ned, in a picture representing the pulp in question. Good, said Ned Land, bursting out with laughter. He is quite right, I said. I have heard of this picture, but the subject represented is taken from a legend, and you know what to think of legends in the matter of natural history. Besides, when it is a question of monsters, the imagination is apt to run wild. Not only is it supposed that these pulps can draw down vessels, but a certain Olaus Magnus speaks of an octopus a mile long that is more like an island than an animal. It is also said that the Bishop of Nidros was building an altar on an immense rock. Mass finished, the rock began to walk and returned to the sea. The rock was a pulp. Another bishop, Pontoppidan, speaks also of a pulp, on which a regiment of cavalry could maneuver. Lastly, the ancient naturalists speak of monsters whose mouths were like gulfs and which were too large to pass through the Straits of Gibraltar. But how much of this is true of these stories? Asked Consul. Nothing, my friends, at least of that which passes the limit of truth to get a fable or legend. Nevertheless, there must be some ground for the imagination of the storytellers. One cannot deny that pulps and cuttlefish exist of a large species, inferior, however, to the cetaceans. Aristotle had stated the dimensions of a cuttlefish as 5 cubits, or 9 feet 2 inches. Our fishermen frequently see some that are more than 4 feet long. Some skeletons of pulps are preserved in the museums of Trieste and Montpellier that measure 2 yards in length. Besides, according to the calculations of some naturalists, one of these animals, only 6 feet long, would have tentacles 27 feet long. That would suffice to make a formidable monster. Do they fish for them in these days? Asked Ned. If they do not fish for them, sailors see them at least. One of my friends, Captain Paul Beau of Havre, has often affirmed that he met one of these monsters of colossal dimensions in the Indian seas. But the most astonishing fact, and which does not permit of the denial of the existence of these gigantic animals, happened some years ago in 1861. What is the fact? Asked Ned Land. It is this. In 1861, to the northeast of Tenerife, very nearly in the same latitude we are in now, the crew of the dispatch boat Elector perceived a monstrous cuttlefish swimming in the waters. Captain Bourgeois went near to the animal and attacked it with harpoon and guns without much success, for balls and harpoons glided over the soft flesh. After several fruitless attempts, the crew tried to pass a slip knot round the body of the mollusk. The noose slipped as far as the tail fins and there stopped. They tried then to haul it on board, but its weight was so considerable that the tightness of the cord separated the tail from the body, and deprived of this ornament, he disappeared under the water. Indeed, is that a fact? An undisputable fact, my good Ned. They proposed to name this pulp Bourgeois cuttlefish. What length was it? Asked the Canadian. Did it not measure about 6 yards? Asked Consul, who, posted at the window, was examining again at the irregular windings of the cliff. Precisely, I replied. Its head, rejoined Consul, was it not crowned with 8 tentacles that beat the water like a nest of serpents? Precisely. Had not its eyes, placed at the back of its head, considerable development? Yes, Consul. And was not its mouth like a parrot's beak? Exactly, Consul. Very well, no offense to master, he replied quietly. If this is not Bourgeois' cuttlefish, it is at least one of his brothers. I looked at Consul. Ned Land hurried to the window. What a horrible beast! He cried. I looked in my turn, and could not repress a gesture of disgust. Before my eyes was a horrible monster, worthy to figure in the legends of the marvelous. It was an immense cuttlefish, being 8 yards long. It swam crossways in the direction of the Nautilus, with great speed, watching us with its enormous staring green eyes. Its 8 arms, or rather feet, fixed to its head, that have given the name of cephalopod to these animals, were twice as long as its body, and were twisted like the furies of hair. One could see the 250 air holes on the inner side of the tentacles. The monster's mouth, a horned beak like a parrot's, opened and shut vertically. Its tongue, a horned substance furnished with several rows of pointed teeth, came out quivering from this veritable pair of shears. What a freak of nature! A bird's beak on a mollusk. Its spindle-like body formed a fleshy mass that might weigh 4,000 to 5,000 pounds. The varying color, changing with great rapidity according to the irritation of the animal, passed successively from livid gray to reddish brown. What irritated this mollusk? No doubt the presence of the Nautilus, more formidable than itself, and on which its suckers or its jaws had no hold. Yet what monsters these pulps are, what vitality the Creator has given them, what vigor in their movements, and they possess 3 hearts. Chance had brought us in presence of this cuttlefish, and I did not wish to lose the opportunity of carefully studying this specimen of cephalopods. I overcame the horror that inspired me, and, taking a pencil, began to draw it. Perhaps this is the same which the Elector saw, said Consul. No, replied the Canadian, for this is whole, and the other had lost its tail. That is no reason, I replied. The arms and tails of these animals are reformed by renewal, and in 7 years the tail of Bourgeois' cuttlefish had no doubt time to grow. By this time other pulps appeared at the port light. I counted 7. They formed a procession after the Nautilus, and I heard their beaks gnashing against the iron hull. I continued my work. These monsters kept in the water with such precision that they seemed immovable. Suddenly the Nautilus stopped. A shock made it tremble in every plate. Have we struck anything? I asked. In any case, replied the Canadian, we shall be free, for we are floating. The Nautilus was floating, no doubt, but it did not move. A minute passed. Captain Nemo, followed by his lieutenant, entered the drawing room. I had not seen him for some time. He seemed dull. Without noticing or speaking to us, he went to the panel, looked at the pulps, and said something to his lieutenant. The latter went out. Soon the panels were shut. The ceiling was lighted. I went towards the captain. "A curious collection of pulps," I said. "Yes, indeed, Mr. Naturalist," he replied, "and we are going to fight them man to beast." I looked at him. I thought I had not heard aright. "Man to beast," I repeated. "Yes, sir. The screw is stopped. I think that the horny jaws of one of the cuttlefish is entangled in the blades. That is what prevents our moving." "What are you going to do?" "Rise to the surface and slaughter this vermin." A difficult enterprise. Yes, indeed. The electric bullets are powerless against the soft flesh, where they do not find resistance enough to go off. But we shall attack them with the hatchet. "And the harpoon, sir," said the Canadian, "if you do not refuse my help." "I will accept it, Master Land." "We will follow you," I said, and following Captain Nemo, we went towards the central staircase. There, about 10 men with boarding hatchets were ready for the attack. Conseil and I took 2 hatchets. Ned Land seized a harpoon. The Nautilus had then risen to the surface. One of the sailors posted on the top ladder step unscrewed the bolts of the panels, but hardly were the screws loosed when the panel rose with a great violence, evidently drawn by the suckers of the pulp's arm. Immediately one of these arms slid like a serpent down the opening, and 20 others were above. With one blow of the axe, Captain Nemo cut this formidable tentacle that slid wriggling down the ladder. Just as we were pressing one on the other to reach the platform, 2 other arms lashing the air came down on the seaman placed before Captain Nemo and lifted him up with irresistible power. Captain Nemo uttered a cry and rushed out. We hurried after him. What a scene! The unhappy man, seized by the tentacle and fixed to the suckers, was balanced in the air at the caprice of this enormous trunk. You didn't take your meds, did you? Mm-hmm. Okay, go take your meds. You can hear me. Come right back. He rattled in his throat. He was stifled. Okay, now everybody's leaving their rooms. I'm sorry, what? Oh, they're home. Okay. Get in your room. Get in your room. JJ, get in your room. Sorry. This pause brought to you by timing. Do 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 do. We are waiting. And we are 40 pages from the end of this book. And like I said, it's double spaced. So it's, hi, Ben's home. Hi, Ben. Okay, all right. Well, we might have to stop right here in the middle of this attack. I'm being patient because Mom's home from a trip. So, but right now we've got children that are not following instructions.
Me.
Including this one.
No.
Yep, not something to be proud of. Okay, ready? Sorry about that. Okay, so he cut off the tentacle, blah, 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 blah. Okay, what a scene. The unhappy man, seized by the tentacle and fixed to the suckers, was balanced in the air at the caprice of this enormous trunk. He rattled in his throat. He was satisfied. He cried, "Help! Help!" These words, spoken in French, startled me. I had a fellow countryman on board, perhaps several. That heart-rending cry, I shall hear it all my life. The unfortunate man was lost. Who could rescue him from that powerful pressure? However, Captain Nemo had rushed to the boat, and with one blow of the axe cut through one arm. His lieutenant struggled furiously against the other monsters that crept on the flanks of the Nautilus. The crew fought with their axes. Canadian consul and I buried our weapons in the fleshy masses. A strong smell of musk penetrated the atmosphere. It was horrible. For one instant, I thought the unhappy man, entangled with the pulp, would be torn from its powerful section. 7 of the 8 arms had been cut off. Only one wriggled in the air, brandishing the victim like a feather. But just as Captain Nemo and his lieutenant threw themselves on it, the animal ejected a stream of black liquid. We were blinded with it. When the cloud disappeared, the cuttlefish had disappeared, and my unfortunate countryman with it. 10 or 12 pulps now invaded the platform and sides of the Nautilus. We rolled pell-mell into the midst of this nest of serpents that wriggled on the platform in the waves of blood and ink. It seemed as though these slimy tentacles sprang up like the Hydra's heads. Ned Land's harpoon at each stroke was plunged into the staring eyes of the cuttlefish, but my bold companion was suddenly overturned by the tentacles of a monster he had not been able to avoid. Ah, how my heart beat with emotion and horror. The formidable beak of a cuttlefish was open over Ned Land. The unhappy man would be cut in two. I rushed to his succor, but Captain Nemo was before me. His axe disappeared between the 2 enormous jaws and miraculously saved. The Canadian, rising, plunged his harpoon deep into the triple heart of the pulp. I owed myself this revenge, said the captain to the Canadian. Ned bowed without replying. The combat had lasted a quarter of an hour. The monsters, vanquished and mutilated, left us at last and disappeared under the waves. Captain Nemo, covered with blood, nearly exhausted, gazed upon the sea that had swallowed up one of his companions, and great tears gathered in his eyes. Chapter 19, The Gulf Stream. This terrible scene on the 20th of April, none of us can ever forget. I have written it under the influence of violent emotion. Since then, I have revised the recital. I have read it to consul and to the Canadian. They found it exact as to facts, but insufficient as to effect. To paint such pictures, one must have the pen of the most illustrious of our poets, the author of The Toilers of the Deep. I have said that Captain Nemo wept while watching the waves. His grief was great. It was the second companion he had lost since our arrival on board, and what a death! That friend, crushed, stifled, bruised by the dreadful arms of the pulp, pounded by his iron jaws, would not rest with his comrades in the peaceful coral cemetery. In the midst of the struggle, it was the despairing cry uttered by the unfortunate man that had torn my heart. The poor Frenchman, forgetting his conventional language, had taken to his own mother tongue to utter a last appeal. Amongst the crew of the Nautilus, associated with the body and soul of the captain, recoiling like him from all contact with men, I had a fellow countryman. Did he alone represent France in this mysterious association, evidently composed of individuals of divers nationalities? It was one. I think that's supposed to be diverse nationalities. There's an E missing. It was one of these insoluble problems that rose up unceasingly before my mind. Captain Nemo entered his room, and I saw him no more for some time. That he was sad and irresolute I could see by the vessel of which he was the soul, and which received all his impressions. The Nautilus did not keep on in its settled course. It floated about like a corpse at the will of the waves. It went at random. He could not tear himself away from the scene of the last struggle, from this scene that had devoured one of his men. 10 days passed thus. It was not till the 1st of May that the Nautilus resumed its northerly course after having sighted the Bahamas at the mouth of the Bahama Canal. We were then following the current from the largest river to the sea that has its banks, its fish, and its proper temperatures. I mean the Gulf Stream. It is really a river that flows freely to the middle of the Atlantic and whose waters do not mix with the ocean waters. It is a salt river, salter than the surrounding sea. Its mean depth is 1,500 fathoms, its mean breadth 10 miles. In certain places, the current flows with the speed of 2.5 miles an hour. The body of its waters is more considerable than that of all the rivers in the globe. It was on this ocean, that the Nautilus then sailed. I must add that during the night, the phosphorescent waters of the Gulf Stream rivaled the electric power of our watchlight, especially in the stormy weather that threatened us so frequently. May 8th, we were still crossing Cape Hatteras at the height of the North Caroline. The width of the Gulf Stream there is 75 miles and its depth 210 yards. The Nautilus still went at random. All supervision seemed abandoned. I thought that under these circumstances escape would be possible. Indeed, the inhabited shores offered anywhere an easy refuge. The sea was incessantly plowed by the streamers that ply between New York or Boston and the Gulf of Mexico, and overrun day and night by the little schooners coasting about the several parts of the American coast. We could hope to be picked up. It was a favorable opportunity, notwithstanding the 30 miles that separated the Nautilus from the coasts of the Union. One unfortunate circumstance thwarted the Canadians' plans. The weather was very bad. We were nearing those shores where the tempests are so frequent, that country of waterspouts and cyclones actually engendered by the current of the Gulf Stream. To tempt the sea in a frail boat was certain destruction. Ned Land owned this himself. He fretted, seized with nostalgia that flight only could cure. "Master," he said that day to me, "this must come to an end. I must make a clean breast of it. This Nemo is leaving land and going up to the north, but I declare to you that I have had enough of the South Pole, and I will not follow him to the north." "What is to be done, Ned, since flight is impracticable just now?" "We must speak to the captain," said he. "You said nothing when we were in your native seas. I will speak now we are in mine. When I think that before long the Nautilus will be by Nova Scotia, and that they're near Newfoundland is a large bay, and that there near Newfoundland is a large bay, and into that bay the St. Lawrence empties itself, and that the St. Lawrence is my river, the river by my Quebec, my native town. When I think of this," which, by the way, is the only fortified city in North America, "when I think of this, I feel furious. It makes my hair stand on end. Sir, I would rather throw myself into the sea. I will not stay here. I am stifled." The Canadian was evidently losing all patience. His vigorous nature could not stand this prolonged imprisonment. His face altered daily. His temper became more surly. I knew what he must suffer, for I was seized with homesickness myself. Nearly 7 months had passed without our having had any news from land. Captain Nemo's isolation, his altered spirits, especially since the flight with the Pulps, his taciturnity, all made me view things in a different light. "Well, sir," said Ned, seeing I did not reply. "Well, Ned, do you wish me to ask Captain Nemo his intentions concerning us?" "Yes, sir." "Although he has already made them known?" "Yes. I wish it settled finally. Speak to him in my name only, if you like." "But I so seldom meet him. He avoids me." "That is all the more reason for you to go to see him." I went to my room. From thence I meant to go to Captain Nemo's. It would not do to let this opportunity of meeting him slip. I knocked at the door, no answer. I knocked again, then turned the handle. The door opened. I went in. The captain was there. Bending over his work table, he had not heard me. Resolved not to go without having spoken, I approached him. He raised his head quickly, frowned, and said roughly, "You here? What do you want?" "To speak to you, Captain." But I am busy, sir. I am working. I leave you at liberty to shut yourself up. Cannot I be allowed to do the same?" The reception was not encouraging, but I was determined to hear and answer everything. "Sir," I said coldly, "I have to speak to you on a matter that admits of no delay." "What is that, sir?" he replied ironically. "Have you discovered something that has escaped me, or has the sea delivered up any new secrets?" We were at cross purposes, but before I could reply, he showed me an open manuscript on his table and said in a more serious tone, "Here, Monsieur Aronnax, is a manuscript written in several languages. It contains the sum of all my studies of the sea, and, if it pleases God, it shall not perish with me. This manuscript, signed with my name, completes the history of my life, will be shut up in a little floating case. The last survivor of all of us on board the Nautilus will throw this case into the sea, and it will go whither it is borne by the waves. This man's name, his history written by himself, his mystery would then be revealed some day." "Captain," I said, "I can but approve of the idea that makes you act thus. The result of your studies must not be lost, but the means you employ them, seems to me to be primitive. Who knows where the winds will carry this case, and in whose hands it will fall? Could you not use some other means? Could you not, you or one of yours—" "Never, sir," he said, hastily interrupting me. "But I and my companions are ready to keep this manuscript in store, and if you will put us at liberty—" "At liberty?" said the captain, rising. "Yes, sir, that is the subject on which I wish to question you. For 7 months we have been here on board, and I ask you today, in the name of my companions and in my own, if your intention is to keep us here always. Monsieur Aronnax, I will answer you today as I did 7 months ago. Whoever enters the Nautilus must never quit it. You impose actual slavery upon us? Give it what name you please. But everywhere the slave has the right to regain his liberty. Who denies you this right? Have I ever tried to chain you with an oath?" He looked at me with his arms crossed. "Sir," I said, "to return a second time to this subject will be neither to your or to my taste. But as we have entered upon it, let us go through with it. I repeat, it is not only myself whom it concerns. Study is to me a relief, a diversion, a passion that could make me forget everything. Like you, I am willing to live obscure in the frail hope of bequeathing one day to future time the result of my labors. But it is otherwise with Ned Land. Every man worthy of the name deserves some consideration. Have you thought that love of liberty, hatred of slavery, can give rise to schemes of revenge in a nature like the Canadians, that he could think, attempt, and try—" I was silenced. Captain Nemo rose. "Whatever Ned Land thinks of, attempts, or tries, what does it matter to me? I did not seek him. It is not for my pleasure that I keep him on board. As for you, Monsieur Aronnax, you are the one who can understand everything, even silence. I have nothing more to say to you. Let this first time you have come to me treat of this subject be the last. For a second time, I will not listen to you." I retired. Our situation was critical. I related my conversation to my 2 companions. "We know now," said Ned, "that we can expect nothing from this man. The Nautilus is nearing Long Island. We will escape, whatever the weather may be." But the sky became more and more threatening. Symptoms of a hurricane became manifest. The atmosphere was becoming white and misty. On the horizon, fine streaks of cirrus clouds were succeeded by masses of cumuli. Other low clouds passed swiftly by. The swollen sea rose in huge billows. The birds disappeared with the exception of the petrels. these friends of the storm. The barometer fell sensibly and indicated an extreme extension of the vapors. The mixture of the storm glass was decomposed under the influence of the electricity that pervades the atmosphere. The tempest burst on the 18th of May, just as the Nautilus was floating off Long Island, some miles from the port of New York. I can describe this strife of the elements, for instead of fleeing to the depths of the sea, Captain Nemo, by an unaccountable caprice, would brave it at the surface. The wind blew from the southwest at first. Captain Nemo, during the squalls, had taken his place on the platform. He had made himself fast to prevent being washed overboard by the monstrous waves. I had hoisted myself up and made myself fast also, dividing my admiration between the tempest and this extraordinary man who was coping with it. The raging sea was swept by huge cloud drifts, which were actually saturated with the waves. The Nautilus, sometimes lying on its side, sometimes standing up like a mast, rolled and pitched terribly. About 5 o'clock, a torrent of rain fell that lulled neither sea nor wind. The hurricane blew nearly 40 leagues an hour. It is under these conditions that it overturns houses, breaks iron gates, displaces 24-pounders. However, the Nautilus, in the midst of the tempest, confirmed the words of a clever engineer. There is no well-constructed hull that cannot defy the sea. This was not a resisting rock. It was a steel spindle, obedient and movable, without rigging or masts, that braved its fury with impunity. However, I watched these raging waves attentively. They measured 15 feet in height and 150 to 175 yards long, and their speed of propagation was 30 feet per second. Their bulk and power increased with the depth of the water. Such waves as these, as the Hebrides, have displaced a mass weighing 8,400 pounds. They which in the tempest of December 23rd, 1864, after destroying the town of Yedo in Japan, broke the same day on the shores of America. The intensity of the tempest increased with the night. The barometer, as in 1860, at Reunion during the cyclone, fell 7/10 at the close of the day. I saw a large vessel pass the horizon, struggling painfully. She was trying to lie to under half steam to keep up above the waves. It was probably one of the steamers of the line from New York to Liverpool or Havre. It soon appeared in the gloom. At 10 o'clock in the evening, the sky was on fire. The atmosphere was streaked with vivid lightning. I could not bear the brightness of it, while the captain, looking at it, seemed to envy the spirit of the tempest. A terrible noise filled the air, a complex noise made up of the howls of the crushed waves, the roaring of the wind, and the claps of thunder. The wind veered suddenly to all points of the horizon, and the cyclone, rising in the east, returned after passing by the north, west, and the south, in the inverse course pursued by the circular storm of the southern hemisphere. Ah, that Gulf Stream! It deserves its name of the king of tempests. It is that which causes those formidable cyclones by the difference of temperature between its air and its currents. A shower of fire had succeeded the rain. The drops of water were changed to sharp spikes. One would have thought that Captain Nemo was courting a death worthy of himself, a death by lightning. As the Nautilus pitched dreadfully, raised its steel spur in the air, it seemed to act as a conductor, and I saw long sparks burst from it. Crushed and without strength, I crawled to the panel, opened it, and descended to the salon. The storm was then at its height. It was impossible to stand upright in the interior of the Nautilus. Captain Nemo came down about 12. I heard the reservoirs filling by degrees, and the Nautilus sank slowly beneath the waves. Through the open windows in the salon, I saw large fish, terrified, passing like phantoms in the water. Some were struck before my eyes. The Nautilus was still descending. I thought that at about 8 fathoms deep, we should find a calm, but no, the upper beds were too violently agitated for that. We had to seek repose at more than 25 fathoms in the bowels of the deep. But there, what quiet, what silence, what peace. Who could have told that such a hurricane had been let loose on the surface of the ocean? And that is where we will have to conclude for this evening. Hopefully we can finish next time, in which we will begin with chapter 20, from latitude 47 degrees 24 minutes to longitude 17 degrees 28 minutes. And I do believe that that's 3 chapters, but we do have 30 pages left of this double-spaced manuscript. I'm just looking, I think it's 3 chapters left. Oh, it's 4 chapters left. Ooh. All right, so next time might go a little long if we have to do that. Unfortunately, next time will not be tomorrow because I do have to work tomorrow. I will be at work from 6 to midnight. So we will have to conclude this one on Friday. And perfect timing because next week begins the new school year. And so we'll see how that goes. It's going to be quite a fun ride. But also on Friday, we will begin a new book of the Bible. So actually, what we might do, since we're going to finish 20,000 Leagues, maybe we'll read one of the 1 chapters tomorrow, and then we'll start the new book, which freed will be Mara, Daughter of the Nile. I recently read it in an audiobook, so I listened to it, and I really, really, really like it. Actually, I read it and listened to it at the same time because I had the book open and was listening to it in the audiobook, which made me be able to listen to the audiobook faster and also keep my pace. But anyway, random. I hope you enjoy Heavy D Storytelling. I hope you're enjoying 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It's getting pretty exciting. Becca's starting next week's school next week too. I'm starting school next week too. So we're all starting school together. Yay! God bless you. I hope you have a wonderful evening, and we will see you on Friday with the finale of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I'm committed. We're just gonna bustle through it, even if it is a little bit longer episode. So once again, God bless you. Have a good day, and adieu. And we'll have to tell you another story.